So tell me, and I know that, if I get up here, I know that on the Letterman segment that we showed before you got here, Letterman was asking you about the fact that so much of this was shot with a green screen, which, if you don't know what the green screen is, it's what the weathermen are doing on the news every night. But you were working in front of a green screen with a lot of the scenes that you shot, I can imagine.
Not too much. The stuff at the end, like, you know, that sort of control room for the Nova Corps. The stuff outside of those windows was all green. Well, yeah, it was green screen, and then a lot of it they didn't even use green screen. They just erased what was in the background, like that last shot when when I gave them their ship back. We shot that on a rooftop in London with all the regular skyline of London around us, but it turned into Xandar somehow. I don't know how they did that, but it probably had something to do with those about 1,500 digital artists that they showed there in the credits.
There were a couple of names out there. Yeah, that's amazing. So on a rooftop, they clean everything up and wind up with just you and the principals in the shot. That's great.
I guess so.
How long were you involved in the shooting of the film?
I worked for over a period of about 4 months. I went in and out probably 5 different times. It was shot in London and outside of London at sound stages there.
That's very cool. If anyone has any questions, raise your hand. Yeah, back over here.
Having seen the film for the very first time today, what was your opinion on your performance? Like, what could you have done better? What did you like about your performance?
I thought it was perfect. Honestly, it was a kind of a revelation because even though I'd read the script, the movie is so visual and so much of what's going on in the movie is with all that, you know, the digital effects and stuff. It was hard to even imagine what it would be like, even having read the script and having been in the movie. So, yeah, I mean, you know, it's always an odd thing the first time you see yourself in a movie because, first of all, everything's out of order. So it seems like this bizarre scrapbook of your life, but in the wrong order. But I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I don't know. In terms of what I could have done better, I don't know.
When you read the script for the first time, you have some sort of an idea of what the whole context of the film is going to be. But do you usually see the film sometime relatively soon after it's completed or before it's been released? Or do you frequently, like this, come and see it in the theater when it's being released?
Yeah, I usually see it with, I mean, I like to see movies with an audience, you know.
Well, you picked a great audience to see it with tonight.
I was thinking, you know, as we're watching that thing, that, you know, the making it or remaking of the theater, I thought, well, you know, one of the cool things about what you did here with this theater is that it's not just showing movies, because let's face it, most of the time, me included, we watch movies at home. But seeing movies in a theater together builds community. You know, you did a beautiful thing here, David. It's really, really cool. So I like to see movies that I'm in with other people, because that's when you really get I've watched movies with just a couple people or agents or whatever, and it's hard to get a sense of what's really working, because you know, you really need a group of people to get a sense of
feedback that you don't get when you're sitting in your living room or
right, yeah, or when you're filming the movie for that part, you don't get all that much feedback.
Yeah. Any other question? Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if I can shake your hand.
Okay, sure. Don't stab me or anything. Thanks a lot.
Question right there.
I was just wondering, you said earlier that you came up to Manistee as a young man, young boy. What did you do the first few times you came here with
Fish. My dad was a big fisherman, so, yeah. Anywhere that I've been, anywhere that I went as a child was in order to go fishing. All around the coast of Wisconsin and Michigan, and eventually down to the Florida Keys. My dad had a house down there.
Do you get much fishing in while you're up here this summer?
I somehow, even though I spent all those years with my dad fishing, I don't give a crap about fishing. I love to be on boats, but the actual fishing, I'm like, oh, look, there's a fish on. Where everyone else is like, ah! Like, I like to eat fish, I like to be on boats, but the actual, I don't have that thing. It's like that thing that people have. It's like gambling or something. You just can't get enough.
Right back up there.
I've heard the sequel's coming out in 2017. Have they contacted you, or is it all set up? You're going to have a part in that one?
I was, you know, when I signed on to this, I had to sign on to a whole bunch of them, not just the first one, so I would assume I'll be in it, but who knows? Seems like I had a pretty good relationship with the old Guardians there.
Back up there.
My two boys are huge fans of yours. Can they come take a selfie?
Maybe after. I mean, it's probably not the best time right now,
We'll
but
catch it after.
Okay.
That's great.
yeah.
Right here.
I suppose I'm most part of my family, but work-wise, I don't know. The truth, I mean, people ask me a lot of times, like, what's your favorite movie, or what do you think you did best? And the truth is, every time you make a movie, a lot of people, like all those names that went by at the end, a lot of people work really hard, and everyone's sort of making this leap of faith and praying for a miracle that an audience will actually connect with the movie. So it's sort of like it's tough to pick one over the other, you know. Yeah, I love doing the musical Chicago. That was, first of all, that's where I'm from, so that was cool. Anyway, groans from the audience here.
03 was a good year because you had, you were nominated for Oscar that year.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, that year, of the 5 top movies, you were in 3 of them that year.
Yeah, no one's ever done that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no one had ever done that before.
No, they never will again.
Yeah. But that must have been quite a year.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I actually had 4 movies come out that year, but 3 of them got nominated for Best Picture. Yeah, it was a little, I went to the Oscars that year, and it was a little crazy because every time someone I knew won, 2 other people lost. So I'd be like, congratulations, I'm sorry.
But it was one of
sitting
the-
around each other there.
But it was one of those things, it was the honor of being nominated.
Yeah, it really is. It is an honor to be nominated. If you look at
Yeah.
the history of, you know, the Academy and all the people that have come through there, like, pretty big shoes. Yeah, so definitely was.
You did-
I mean, it was surreal to be sitting there like in a tuxedo on TV. But
You did, I think was that the year that you did a bit?
no, that was a year or 2 later when,
Was that-
when Jack Black and Will Ferrell and I sang that song.
Yes.
Comedian at the Oscars.
Yes,
it's called.
yes. That was interesting. I remember watching that thinking, that was an absolutely extraordinary routine for the group of you to do.
I don't know if anyone remembers that or not, but I stood up in the middle of the audience and started singing with this, you know, this microphone attached to me. And that's, I mean, what do they say, like 1 billion people watch the Oscars or something?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm about to sing a song live for 1 billion people. Like, Martin Scorsese sitting next to me like, excuse me,
Wait,
I don't know if you can't really think those things through. You just have to practice what you're gonna do and just jump into it.
well, speaking of Will Ferrell,
Oh, God.
you've done how many movies with him?
Just two, and a couple of video things, but
And I mean, it looks like the two of you are having a good time.
yeah. We're having a great time. It's ridiculous that we get paid to do what we do. But, and not to say that comedy's easy, because it actually, you know, comedy can be cruel, you know, if it's not funny, it's really clear that it's not funny. You know, drama, you can sort of do a scene and you can just, you know, no one claps on movie sets or whatever. You can do a dramatic scene, and you can think like, well, it depends like what the audience's personal experience is, whether they connect to the scene or emotionally or not or whatever. But a comedy, you're either laughing or you're not. You either hear people laughing or you don't, and if you don't, it's like, ugh. But yeah, it's a super, super fun day, and Will is, you may have heard, like, is one of the coolest people ever. He's super, super down to earth and a great family guy, and I really do feel like his brother in some weird way. I met him and I was like, the first time we met, I was like, wait a minute. Was your dad a milkman in my neighborhood? Something very familiar about you.
Had you known him before you did the first film?
Yeah, we met. I did a movie with Molly Shannon, who was on Saturday Night Live with him, and we met. And was it probably 4 years later or so that we did Talladega Nights?
Oh,
What
great,
movie was
great.
that, the one you did with them?
Talladega Nights.
Oh, built with Molly Shannon?
Oh, with Molly Shannon, was called Never Been Kissed. Yeah, with Drew Barrymore.
Interesting. Is it true that you and Will Ferrell are looking at doing another film?
Yeah, definitely. We've got more than one idea we're trying to get going, but he's a busy guy. We'll see. I hope so. Awful fun day at work.
Right back here.
Did you enjoy, this is a multi-part question, did you enjoy the movie, and can you, being in the business, can you enjoy your own movies and movies in general without picking them apart while you're watching them?
Yeah, this movie, I definitely enjoyed this movie. And it, like I said, it's a little difficult the first time you watch a movie that you're in, because it just, you know, you have the reality of what happened that day and all the different things that happened that day, and then just certain parts of it are up on the screen in a different order. So that can be a little, and I didn't this time, but usually I get a headache the first time I watch a movie that I'm in, because you're sort of staring so hard, like, what's, and absolutely, I can still enjoy a good movie. It's the bad ones, or the mediocre ones, where you're like, oh, you know, you can kind of see the seams where they sewed it all together. But I guess that's the beautiful thing about movies. When they're done well, you know, it doesn't matter what your relationship is, or what your job is. You get swept up in it, in the illusion.
Right here.
I have 2 questions. The first
You can only have one.
the first one was, what was your favorite part of this movie? And the second one was, how many times did you have to say 100% take to
I say that a lot of times. And it was somewhat of a, you know, not the easiest line to say, but he said, and I quote, he's an a-hole, but not, and again I quote, 100% a dick. Yeah, I had to say it a bunch of times. I don't know that I have a certain scene that jumps out at me, but what I loved about the movie was there's that emotion behind it. You know, you start off a movie, this kind of movie, this big kind of blockbuster movie, and it's rather than starting with a huge fist fight between 2 incredibly strong people, it starts out with a kid in the hospital with his mother dying, and like this super emotional scene. I thought that was really cool, and that emotional through line carries through the movie by way of the music. So every time you hear music, even though it's kind of funny and, you know, campy 70s music, you know, every time that music is playing, it has that connection to his lost mother, and that was a really intense, special part of the movie. It gives it something that a lot of these kind of superhero movies lack sometimes. There's so much, so much pyrotechnics that sometimes the emotional stuff gets left.
We saw it here in 2D, but that I know I was reading one of the reviews today talking about the fact that this may be one of the best 3D movies of the summer. And I can only imagine what this must look like in 3D. I mean, the effects are just extraordinary. But it's amazing what the technology is all about. There was another hand over here, right there.
Check it out with Dr. Steve Rule is fantastic. It's my favorite. That being said, is there going to be a fourth season, you think?
I don't know, you'd have to check with Steve. He's hard to get a hold of. You have to page his friend Denny, and then Denny faxes Steve, and then it's a long, complicated process. But I hope so. I enjoy that show too.
Way back up there.
Have you ever started bursting out laughing in the middle of your scene?
Yes. Speaking of Will Ferrell, many times with Will Ferrell. But not on this movie. This movie had to be so serious all the time. But yeah, the answer to your question is yes.
Right over here.
Well, you played in superheroes and Detroit Tigers, a couple NASCARs. Is there any kind of role that you would look forward to playing in the future, or any kind of certain position like president or anything like that?
Well, it's a tough thing as an actor. You really can't. I mean, you're bound to be disappointed if you set your sights on one specific kind of part. But I can say, I've always wanted to play a priest for whatever reason. I grew up Catholic, and I thought that was a pretty interesting life. And an explorer, a sea captain. That sounds random, but because it is. But yeah, I've been really lucky. You know, audiences have been willing to accept me in a lot of different kinds of parts, a lot of different sorts of movies, and this is a first for me, this kind of movie. But I've done, you know, comedies and dramas and action movies, and it's pretty cool. You know, a lot of actors, you know, audiences only like them to do one specific thing, and if you stray outside of that, like, oh, no, you're the funny guy, or whatever it is. And I've been really lucky that audiences have wanted variety from what I do.
But most of your early movies, until you began to do some comedies, some very funny movies, most of your early movies were all relatively serious, weren't they?
Yes and no. I mean, if you really look at the list, there's a lot of variety even in the beginning. I did some dramatic parts when I started out, but my second film was a comedy, you know. We're No Angels, and then, I don't know, yeah. And I've done some very dramatic movies very recently, and yeah.
Do you miss not doing, when was the last stage play that you've done?
I think it was Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway. It's been a little while now. I've done some stuff, smaller stuff, short-term stuff in LA, but yeah.
And you were nominated for a Tony for a role that you did.
Yeah, True West.
True West.
Yeah, Sam Shepard played.
Right, and that was with Hoffman, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Interesting. Do you enjoy? Would you like to go back and do Broadway again?
Absolutely. I mean, I really grew up. I didn't even dream I would ever be in a movie as a kid. It wasn't until I was finished with college that I thought, wait a minute, someone could do that for a living. You could be in a movie, like, I honestly, through my whole childhood and almost all the way through college, I kept thinking, like, I gotta get a job. I gotta figure out a job, because I keep doing this acting thing, but I gotta get a job, like. And then I remember seeing a movie with my sister one time and just getting so, like, I was so inspired by the movie. I think it was Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams, actually. And we're walking out, and it was towards the end of my college years, and I turned to her and I said, I want to be in a movie. And she was like, you will. And she was so confident, I was like, whoa, maybe she's right. Like, that would be cool. Anyway, she's here tonight. Thanks to her.
There was a hand that went up, way back over there.
So what was your early training and what was the path that, what was your break?
I started doing theater at the local park near my house, Marquette Park in Chicago, and it was all musicals pretty much. Then I continued to do it through high school, and I would do it not only at my boys' Catholic high school that I went to, but I would go to the girls' schools. I would lend myself out to the girls' schools because they were always looking for guys for their musicals. And then I went to DePaul University in Chicago at a place called the Goodman School of Drama. It's now called the Theater School at DePaul University. And that's like a 4-year program where you eat, sleep, and dream theater for 4 years. And you learn all different aspects of theater and acting, and pretty much right out of college, within a year, I auditioned on videotape for my first movie, Casualties of War, and they cast me off that videotape as a little tiny part, and then they did some casting rearranging once I was over there, and I ended up with one of the leads of the movie. Like, talk about dumb luck, like. And then that was such a high-profile movie with, like, the director was Brian De Palma and Sean Penn and Michael J. Fox were in the movie, and so it gave me a really good kind of high watermark. Like, you know, you started off doing this level of quality movie, like you should keep going after stuff like that. So, but there's a lot of luck involved. There really is. I mean, you have to be prepared, and you have to work hard, and you have to have some talent, but.
And Brian De Palma, who directed that film, obviously saw something. And did you work with him on another film then after that? Or
No, that was the only one. That was the only one. But I worked with Sean Penn, I think, 3 or 4 more times after that. My first 3 movies were with Sean. Yeah. I don't know. I just. For a long time, probably for like the first, I'd say 50, I've done almost 70 movies at this point. For the first like 15 movies, the directors were like, oh my gosh, who is this kid? Like, I kept getting discovered over and over again, which was great because, you know, they didn't have some preconceived notion of who I was or what I could do. They just were delighted, you know, to find me each time.
From a personal standpoint, I think it was the year that, only because I loved Chicago as a stage play. It was just a great stage play. And then when we saw the movie and saw Gangs of New York that year, and it was sort of like, that guy keeps cropping up in so many movies.
Yeah. Well, the reason that it happened, the reason that I was in all those movies that year was, there's actually a practical reason for it, which is that 9/11 happened, and all of the studios kind of held any movie that had any kind of violence in it, and also people just weren't going to the movies for a while there, so a lot of the releases got held up, and so then by the time they came out, they sort of all coming out at once. So movies that I had made over a period of like maybe 2 or 3 years all came out in 1 year. So yeah, so at that point, but I mean, then I was nominated for that Oscar, and it was like, well, Mr. Cellophane, no more, I guess. And it's like everywhere this year.
Well, it's funny because we would look at films and say, you and Bill Macy seems to be someone else who you see in so many films. He's got a great television series now. And then I discovered that you worked with Bill Macy in a couple of films too.
Yeah, we did Boogie Nights and Magnolia together, yeah. Bill's amazing, he's another Chicago guy.
Yeah, right over here.
There were some funny references to Footloose in the movie, and Footloose is going to be playing at the Ransdale the next couple of weekends here, and I had the 2 leads here next to me. They wondered if you were going to come see them.
Unfortunately, I won't be in Michigan much longer, I'm just here for a few more days, but darn it. I missed Peter Pan last spring. That really bummed me out because that was one of the first plays I ever did. I played Captain Hook when I was in 7th grade in Peter Pan. But yeah, I try to get out. I try to get out and see local theater whenever I can.
Let's take just a couple more questions, right back there.
What did you study in college, and what did you want to do before you realized you wanted to be in movies and acting?
Well, like I mentioned, I went to DePaul University, I went to the theater school there, and I studied, have a BFA in acting, basically. And until I decided that, and I really didn't have any reference points. I didn't know anyone who was an actor. I didn't know, not a single person growing up. And it just seemed like this totally crazy, unattainable, fantastical kind of thing that someone would be an actor. Like, I would go to movies and I wouldn't think like, oh, that guy has a job of an actor and he makes money doing this and blah, blah. I would just see who they were. Harrison Ford is Han Solo. You know, like, this is where I was at. I was just kind of, I guess I did consider some jobs, like I could be a lawyer maybe. I'm good at debating things. I thought about the priesthood at one point for about 2 seconds, and I don't know. I thought my dad had a business. I thought about a lot of different things, but then at some point I realized, if I become an actor, I don't have to choose. I can do all of those things. I can do the most fun part of those jobs, whether it's a fisherman or a race car driver or a space policeman. I get to do it for 6 months and do the most intense experience of that job, and then as soon as it kind of gets boring, I can move on to something else which suits my personality.
Let's take one more right here.
If I could have a different part in that movie, I don't know, I thought that raccoon was pretty cool. He had a pretty good backstory, but I think I'm a little too big to